a major news story that dropped on Monday. And as you say, it wasn't an April Fool's Day joke because Liberty Media has acquired 86% of Dorna Sports. Now, yes, Liberty Media, who own Formula One, is now the majority owner of Dorna, MotoGP, Moto2, Moto3, Moto E, Superbike World Championship, and the new Women's Circuit Racing World Championship as well. Now, since Liberty took over control of F1, we've seen it grow exponentially in the United States, especially after the popular Netflix series of Drive to Survive. MotoGP has made a similar deal with Amazon Prime to do their own version of Drive to Survive, but it only lasted a single season. Now, MotoGP introduced sprint races at every event last year, as F1 added several sprints, and the graphic there courtesy of Liberty Media. Yes, Matt, we had to sort of wake up a little bit, didn't we, to make sure it was all true. It was in the rumour works for a while, wasn't it, as well? Big ones there from Leonardo coming in there. We was in the rumour mill for a while that this was going to happen. We all heard the rumours. We all sort of dismissed it. The timing was weird to drop it. But how massive is it for Liberty Media to own the pinnacle of Automa Club racing in both motorcycles and automobiles, and with MotoGP and the other feeder series that come with it?
Yeah, good evening, Josh. Good evening, Kobe. Hello, everybody. Back at normal European time tonight, so we're a little bit bleary-eyed after a couple of weeks at better time for us, but we're back at the 11 o'clock hour. And yeah, you're right. This news, strange day for this to roll out was April Fool's Day, but here we are, and this is actually happening. And what a mad story this is. Liberty Media coming in and swooping MotoGP, who, as you say, the rumours have been circulating pretty much since the end of last season, certainly beginning of this year, post-Christmas, that there was an opportunity for Dorna to, or MotoGP and the Dorna group to have someone buy into them as such. And Liberty have come in and taken more than 3/4 of the rug from under them. If you like, with that 86% share, Dorna will still control what we see coming out of the TV set every week, really, the on-track product, but the ownership strand has gone to Liberty. Now, if you think back to pre-Formula One Liberty days, like early to mid-teens, Formula One was not in the place that it has been over the last couple of years. And to be fair to Liberty, and we've talked a lot about them in the last 6 months or so on this show, especially on the downside, but they massively picked Formula One up, and this is exactly the kick in the bum that MotoGP especially needs, because their marketing strategy over the last couple of years, especially since Valentino Rossi retired, has been terrible. And I've been watching this paddock since 98, 99, I'd guess. And the racing is brilliant. It is a tremendous product, but it's not getting enough eyes on it. And now they've got the Liberty Group behind them, and this falls into a couple of other things we've seen recently with, especially in the US side, Liberty own the Discovery Group, which is TNT, and now you can see MotoGP on that product in the US. It's all falling into place a little bit for them in that sense, but now they can hopefully really push this forward and get a lot more eyes on MotoGP, because it deserves to be watched by everybody. It should be appointment viewing. We should have a race this weekend, but it got cancelled in Argentina. So interesting to see what we get when we get to COTA in a couple of weeks, what more quotes we'll get from the Dorna side, because we haven't really heard much from them apart from the press releases that came out at the beginning of the week when the announcement was raised. But my key thing here is that the promotion that MotoGP desperately needed over the last 3 or 4 years, maybe longer, finally it might get some push behind it, and that can start going in the right direction.
Absolutely, because under Bernie Ecclestone's rule of Formula One, not everybody could watch the highlights of Grand Prix live on television. Nobody could do anything like this. It was all pay TV and locked behind doors and literally blood out of a stone. Let's just catch up on some comments first of all, though. Hi to Omi, who always watching on and makes a very good point as well, does Adam, that MotoGP is incredible.
Thank you, Adam.
in the USA on True TV. It is. It's just incredible as well. Omi brings up a good point that I want to link into in a second once we're finished with these comments. The good thing is we won't see any clashes, as Liberty Media wouldn't want that. And I'll get on further that in just a second as we read to the comments, because Matthew says, absolutely loving being able to watch on True TV. Phenomenal athletes as well. They really, really are. There's been 2 great races. Yeah, the big thing here is for Liberty Media, they're not going to want to have a clash between their 2 biggest rivals. So having Formula One and MotoGP now owned by the same company means the start times are now no longer going to clash. So if you remember back to the end of last year, where we had Formula One having its normal end of season in Abu Dhabi and everything was already decided, everything was wrapped up, nothing was left to fight for, that still got more viewers than the finale in Valencia, which had a massive title decider that was absolutely brilliant and ended up with Martin crashing out, Bagnaia getting the title. That was live on free-to-air television and TNT Sports and all around the world. It got thrashed in the ratings. And that is because the promotion is not good, because they're on at exactly the same time. Formula One started, an hour later it was MotoGP. I had to run between 2 different commentary boxes to cover both. So that is no longer going to happen. I'm very thankful for that. No more clashes. Brilliant. Another thing is, this is great news for MotoGP, because where Formula One, as you mentioned earlier, Matt, they were struggling behind in the early teens where there was no race highlights. There was nothing. MotoGP had a higher social media presence. It's gone backwards now since Liberty took over. Every week you get highlights of practice, highlights of the qualifying, sprint race highlights, post-race shows live everywhere. With MotoGP, you're lucky if you even get a live grid like 30 minutes before. There's nothing on their social media channels. Their social media is a joke. There's no highlights of any sprint or race action. There's no pre-race build-up, post-race build-up. There's nothing there. It's all locked away behind the video pass. Could Liberty help evaluate MotoGP? And do you anticipate them making any big changes, not only to MotoGP in terms of the social and digital output, but also to the race weekends themselves with the format that the riders don't like?
Yeah, and Omi adds to your point, Josh, with saying that there you have the F2 and F3 highlights on the F1 YouTube page for certain. I agree. If you think back to pre-Liberty days, in that early teens, the dawn of Twitter and social media getting on board, where was Formula One? It was absolutely nowhere, dead, doornail, nada, nothing coming out of Formula One at all in terms of social media. And then they got the ball rolling, and then we've had. During the pandemic, we had full races, classic races streamed on the YouTube channel. That would never have been thought about 5 years ago. MotoGP does a similar thing, and Superbike too, to some degree, on the World Superbike side. But yeah, hopefully that is going to, as I said before, really give them a shot in the arm. Interesting you picked up on the start times. That isn't something I had not thought of. So are we even going to have clashes? Are we going to have MotoGP, then the next weekend Formula One, then the next weekend MotoGP? Is that going to be the way the calendar works? Something to be wary of. Where will World Superbike fit into this as well? Because that's now under this big umbrella. What will they do with it? Please don't kill it off, because that's something that they might just do. Oh well, we've got this now, so let's shuffle that off over there, because the races at Barcelona a couple of weeks ago were absolutely tremendous. For instance, so World Superbike is on a massive uptick at the moment. And hopefully they can jump onto the coattails of all of this too. But yeah, from an output side of things, it all looks very positive, doesn't it? For the points that we've both already raised, there's already been a lot of Twitter backlash, I suppose you could say, from people going, "Oh no, we're going to have street tracks for MotoGP. They're not going to go to all the classic circuits." But that's also been said of Formula One, and you can possibly say true, but they still go to Spa, they still go to Monza, just signed a new deal. Silverstone, massive new deal, signed a couple of weeks back. Monaco's still on the calendar, although it's coming up to deal time for Monaco too. Suzuka, new deal coming up this weekend, of course. They haven't got rid of the classic tracks. If Liberty get rid of your Assens and your Jerez and Mugello, then we've got a problem on our hands. And start taking it to, far-flung places that no one's heard of, Kazakhstan, Kimi Ring. So we'll see. But at the moment, it looks all pretty positive for MotoGP. And as I said, the crest of a wave through the early noughties and the Valentino Rossi and the wave behind all of that going on. And, being slightly with my fan biased hat on, during that Rossi Stoner era, a little bit towards the end of the 2000s, and then Marquez coming in, there was so much interest. But as soon as Rossi retired, everyone went with him. And maybe those people have gone to Formula One to some degree, to get their motorsport fix. But hopefully this can bring people back, because there's so many people in the MotoGP paddock that if they had a spotlight shined on them, they'd be megastars. And they've got one coming. And we've seen it over the last couple of weeks in Pedro Acosta. Exactly the right time for that young guy to have a big push behind him, because he's going to win multiple championships in the years to come.
He is going to be a race winner this season on that Gas KTM, which is still the factory Gas as well. Gas running the same bike as KTM's factory team, but there's even talk already of Jack Miller and him swapping over as well. More on that later. Get to the comments then, because we've got Adam saying World Superbikes are awesome, another good series. Interesting enough though, we'll get back onto World Superbikes and what we mentioned in the next part of the comment, because there is something still that Liberty have to do. So we'll get back onto that in a second. Leonardo says, also brings MotoGP to people like me who know nothing about it. Perfect. That's exactly it. Got to bring it out there. This is good for Momi. Possibly could MotoGP in its feeder series maybe come onto Sky or other channel that could be good, unless price increases massively due to it. The TV deal is running out at the end of this year for TNT Sports, but I cannot see it leaving TNT Sports. That's a good home for it. The only good thing that could come from this, Matthew, for both this UK and US point of view and the rest of the world, free-to-air television, because ITV have got it here in the UK, and it's been a bit bizarre because it was free in Portugal, but they put it on ITV3 and ITV4, which is, for those of you in America, is like putting it on C-SPAN. It's way, way, way down the order. Nobody ever watches it. So Omi puts out that could also bring more people in, as they haven't had to pay extra stuff like TNT. Like, I may watch from time to time, but I want to pay extra. Could we see possibly like half the races live, half the races and highlights from a dedicated broadcaster?
Potentially. We did have the races at Portimao last week in the UK on free to air. They didn't promote it at all, ITV. It was just landed in their lap, and they'll have Silverstone, obviously, because they have to have the Grand Prix, a bit like the British Grand Prix for Formula One is on Channel 4 in the UK. ITV have got their link with TNT. But as I mentioned before, TNT and the Discovery Group, part of Liberty. So
not going to move.
It all lines up nicely, and that takes in the US stuff on True TV as well. So, you're right. Then they've done a terrific job on the what was BT Sport and now TNT side with their coverage. It's going really well. So I can't see that changing. And of course, Eurosport becomes more TNT channels after the Olympics as well in the UK, which has World and British Superbike. So you're all, again, from a UK parochial perspective, it all brings it back under the banner. I can't see MotoGP in the UK ending up on Sky Sports F1. I can't see that being a thing. That would be like, to your point, Josh, that'd be like MotoGP ending up on Fox Sports 2 from a couple of years ago when that was a thing.
Another good thing about this as well is that now we very much do have a split, don't we? Which I think is quite good, because everyone moans now about where to watch all the racing. Apart from Formula E, which might do a little bit of moving around to Sky Sports eventually, I'm hearing. That's another thing that's in the works. We've got, if you want 4 wheels, you go Sky Sports. You want 2 wheels, you go TNT Sports. And I like that split. I do like it, because it's very much, you want 2 wheels, it's TNT. You want 4, it's Sky. And it's getting like that in America now, isn't it? Because you've got Roku getting more and more with the 4 wheels. You've got ESPN sort of dabbling. And then you've got all the NASCAR coming under sort of different banners. It's a bit more complicated in the States, but here in the UK, it's a bit 2 and 2.
Yeah, and then obviously everything else seems to be on YouTube now. Yeah. So there's no motorsport on television anymore. Well, there is, and it's all streamed and it's all free, a lot of it. So that argument is a bit null and void, but it's getting away from the point.
Yeah, there is one big stopping block to this Liberty Media deal. And that is that Liberty Media is based in the United States. Now it owns both F1 and MotoGP, two of the biggest racing series on the international stage. It's a major change in the motorsport landmark. And it makes you wonder as well about the other major racing series in the world and what they'll do in response to Liberty's growing power. Two questions to you here, Matt. First, would it be smart for other prominent racing series to merge and position themselves against a more powerful Liberty Media? And second, is Liberty Media going to get this through the EU because they now have a monopoly over F1, MotoGP, but also a major monopoly in motorcycles as they own MotoGP and World Superbikes? Now, when Dorna brought both, the EU didn't like it, introduced this law, so in the future, you can't own both. So there's now a possibility that Superbikes, as you said earlier, could be sold on to another investor. So are they going to get it through the EU Court of Appeals?
Interesting, yeah. I mean, when this story first kind of was doing the rounds, excuse me, in the underground of sort of Twitter and the social media landscape, you brought that up in our own grid chat. Like, this is going to be a thing that's going to be potentially a problem for them. If I've got this right now, I'm not 100% sure, so I'm not going to go fully on the record with this. But when MotoGP and Dorna, they didn't buy World Superbike outright. They bought the television rights, and that came with it in Italy. I've got a slight feeling with a few years ago. So they ended up with it in their lap, basically, and went, well, we'll give it a go. But you're right. But they may want to in a few years' time, and they may have to. They may be, forced to put World Superbike out to not to pasture, because that sounds like it's going to be killed off. But you know what I'm trying to say here. Just shuffle it off to again another thing. What's the phrase? A high tide raises all ships. Let's hope that there isn't going to be a couple of championships like World Superbike and others coming together and going, right, we need to get on together here and keep ourselves going, because that just will end up in a bad shape for everybody, I feel like. So let's hope it can. Clashes, as we've already talked about, hopefully will sort themselves out. And with a lot of the European television stuff, Sky in Italy especially have F1 and they have MotoGP
both
on Sky. It's not the same in Spain, but it certainly is in Italy. So they want to avoid all that for televisual clashes and them being on at the same time. It's not so bad when they're in two different time zones at the same time, as we saw a couple of weeks ago with Melbourne and Portugal. Worked out quite well. But when they're both in Europe, they don't want to be on at the same time. We've seen that at Silverstone a few times, haven't we, where they've shuffled the order of the races around for MotoGP so that they didn't have a clash, where Moto2 ended up being last or Moto3 ended up being last. And everybody went home after the MotoGP race at Silverstone and didn't watch the last one because they'd seen the main race and they left. So going to be interesting. It's not done, this thing. It is still going through, and it's probably going to take all the way probably to the end of the year. People are suggesting for this to get all signed off, all I's dotted and T's crossed. So obviously we'll keep you updated on the show every week when we get some more news. But I'm looking forward to COTA for 2 weeks' time for MotoGP, because we're going to have everybody in the paddock for the first time since this news broke, and we're going to get, I'm sure, more quotes and tidbits and potential things going forward. So that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on in COTA in a couple of weeks.